Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kane Becker, and today we do another deep dive into Tubi. And with that, let's get to the list.
Don't you ever feel like you're seeing something that you're not supposed to? Wake up.
Come True is a 2020 Canadian sci-fi horror movie, written and directed by Anthony Scott Burns. It stars Julia Sarah Stone and Landon Liboiron. It follows a teenage runaway who takes part in a sleep study that becomes a nightmarish descent into the depths of her mind and a frightening examination into the power of dreams.
Are we ready?
Tubi is just absolutely killing it this month. This is the third Tubi video I have made in the last couple weeks because I just keep coming up with more and more content that they're streaming right now that they hadn't in the past. And this is one of my favorite movies from the last couple years. Like, I really love this movie. Yes, it's a bit of a slow burn. Yes, you have to be in the right headspace to watch it, but it's one of those movies that's unnerving. It's very much a psychological horror movie that just really fucks with your imagination, messes with your thoughts, and there's a bit of a Lovecraftian element to it. Now, I'm not in any way saying it's a Lovecraftian movie, but just that element of the unknown, the things we don't understand, the things we can't get our minds around, those different things that I've always found to be just really creepy stuff. But this movie has been living over on Hulu for quite a while, and I just kept waiting, hoping that eventually it would drop on Tubi so that more people would get a chance to check this out. And as soon as I saw that it was on Tubi now, I was like, all right, I gotta make another Tubi list because I just enjoyed this movie that much. But it's definitely not gonna be for everyone. I am sure there are some of you out there that have either seen this or we'll watch it on my recommendation and then be like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. That movie was boring, it was slow, and all of that. I get it. Like I said, it is a bit of a slow burn. It is a movie that has a lot more to do with the psychological elements of things. It is a fairly small production kind of movie, so it's not one that's gonna have big explosions, crazy special effects, CGI, and all of that. But I think if you enjoy indie, slow burn, psychological horror movies, this is one you definitely need to see.
Stay awake. Stay alive.
The Edge of Sleep is a 2024 psychological horror series. Directed by Corey Adams, it's based on the podcast and novel of the same name, and stars Markiplier, Eve Harlow, and Franz Drama. When a night watchman finishes his shift at work, he is terrified to discover that everyone in the world who went to sleep the night before has died.
Wake me up!
This is such a cool little series, and when I say little, it is a very small production. You can see this is not some big budget series. And unfortunately, yeah, it's got Markiplier attached to it, which if you're not familiar with who he is, he's a big YouTuber, gamer, streamer, you know, big personality in the YouTube space. But he's also someone who's been very much using his resources and skills to make movies and series and things like that. That's really his big thing that he's been trying to do over the last couple years. And so yeah, he's involved in this, but unfortunately, that's about the only thing there was as far as promotion for this, is him on his channel letting his fan base know. And from what I know, they did support it pretty good, but it's not like Amazon was really pushing this series. And so it just was kind of released to no fanfare over on Amazon last year, and nobody really talked about it. I did cover it in one other video early this year, and I really enjoy it. It's really good. Now, like I said, it is small, so you have to kind of keep that in mind. Don't expect too much from it, but it's well acted, well shot, well directed. The story and everything is very mysterious and gets pretty damn creepy. And this is one that lives in that cosmic horror Lovecraftian space. I'm not gonna elaborate beyond that because I don't want to spoil it, but it does deal with things that lead it down into that direction. But it's a real bummer because it didn't get more support from Prime. I don't know if we're gonna get get a season 2. But that in no way should mean that you shouldn't check this out, because I think it's still a cool series and has an interesting enough and well done conclusion that even though it leaves you wanting more, you're not feeling like it's a cliffhanger or you're disappointed or you didn't get to see or enjoy the things that you wanted from it. But my big hope, and I know that Markiplier's hope for it as well, is that now that it's on Tubi, more people will finally check it out and maybe it'll start to get some of the support that it deserves, and maybe someone will finance a season 2. Because I think, especially if you put a little bit more money, a little more resources into this world, this universe that's built out here, you could do something really special with it. But I think as long as you go into this with the right expectations, just looking to be entertained, I think you could really have a good time with it.
Okay, so we know 2 things. It loves Bollywood music, and it has a bindi on its forehead.
Slaxx.
Slaxx is a 2020 Canadian horror movie, co-written and directed by Elsa Kapar. It stars Romain Dennis, Brett Donahue, and Sihar Bojani. When a possessed pair of jeans begins to kill the staff of a trendy clothing store, it is up to an idealistic young sales clerk to stop its bloody rampage.
Oh my god. I'm so totally excited. I could just die.
All right, here's another one that is absolutely not going to be for everyone. Honestly, it's actually probably a pretty narrow group of people that this movie is for. But I think that those people are going to really get a kick out of this movie. It's silly. It's very over the top, very campy. I mean, it is very much a horror comedy. And just the idea of a pair of pants running around killing people, I mean, that in of itself, of course, is silly. But there's a fun Bollywood angle to this movie. And the movie in general just has this Indian Bollywood kind of feel, even though it's an American movie. On top of that, there's some fun gore and kills in it, but it's one you definitely cannot take serious at all. This is a very silly movie, but I think it's a good time. I really had some good laughs and just an overall entertaining time with it. So I think if you're in the mood for some silliness, this is a great pick.
Closer. It's all in your head.
You have no idea what he's capable of.
Son is a 2021 Irish horror movie, written and directed by Ivan Kavanagh. It stars Emil Hirsch, Annie Manichek, and Luke David Blum. When a young boy contracts a mysterious illness, his mother must decide how far she is willing to go to protect him from terrifying forces in her past.
Why do you think these people were here? Who were they?
I was raised in a cult. It was them. They're coming for us.
This is a really good one. It's another recent addition to Tubi that had been over on Shudder for the last few years. But because of that, I feel like a very limited amount of people have seen this. And like a lot of the movies over on Shudder, unless they get a theatrical release, they just kind of get it put on Shudder and disappear. People don't talk about them unless you're really a diehard horror fan that watches the releases that Shudder puts out basically every week. You probably missed this one, but it's really eerie and creepy and gets into some really evil, demonic, weird things. But I'm trying to dance around it because I don't want to give away too much, but it has some strange cult vibes and evil Satanist kind of elements about it. But it also has some interesting layers to it of the story on really what the core of this is about what this mother is willing to do to protect her son. We've heard so many news stories over the years of mothers who know that their kid has killed someone and yet they protect them, or in my case, a mother who was paranoid of the entire world around me and thought the entire world was evil and all of that, and so sheltered me to the point that it almost damn near killed me. And so the core of this story lives in that space, but it doesn't forget it's a horror movie and definitely has a lot of horror imagery, deals with some strange and creepy stuff, and is a lot more hardcore than you're going to expect it to be as well. Because there's a few scenes in this that surprise me and definitely goes for it. But I think this is a real little gem that's definitely worth adding to your list.
Where are you going?
I'm taking you home.
This is not the way to my fucking house, Kurt.
Oh, no, not your home. My home.
Spree is a 2020 comedy horror movie directed by Eugene Kotlarenko. It stars Joe Keery, Sashir Zamata, and David Arquette. Desperate for an online following, a rideshare driver has made a deadly plan to go viral and will stop at nothing to get his 5 minutes of fame.
What we're doing here is important. We're creating a brand.
Here's another fun one. I really enjoyed this, especially coming from the YouTube world and watching a lot of live streams, knowing YouTubers, knowing streamers. Just there's so many younger people now that are looking to that as a career choice. And it's kind of become this rock star status in a lot of ways. And I've heard younger people talking about it in terms and things that are kind of similar to what you see Joe Keery's character going through in this. And so it deals with that whole social media status and becoming famous and people making tons of money even though they're really, really young, and people that are a little bit older and wanting that, as well as envying and not understanding why it's not happening for them. And so it talks about and deals with a lot of that is really interesting because it's so now. It's such a unique thing that is really the first time in history we have something like this. That social status can literally become currency, and you can make a lot of money as well as get famous just based on your clout, your social clout, your look, your personality, whatever. So this takes that concept, but then it turns it all the way up and it pushes it until it becomes humorous and silly, but it also gets gory and violent. It's goofy, but there's still a serious creepiness about this too. And it doesn't forget it's also a horror movie. So yes, it's funny. There's definitely a lot of comedy in this, but like I said, it also gets violent. It also gets into that creepy area as well. But one of my favorite things about this movie, and my recommendation to you when you check this out, make sure you read some of the comments that the people online are writing when he's streaming, because it is absolutely hilarious and gives a whole different level and layer of complexities as well as humor to this movie. But I think this movie is an absolute blast and a perfect popcorn kind of horror movie. So definitely check this one out.
Who says we're immune? Odukja uksid hamo. Awenda sui lexicon.
Blood Quantum is a 2019 Canadian horror movie, written, directed, and edited by Jeff Barnaby. It stars Michael Greyeyes, Forrest Goodluck, and Gary Farmer. The dead are coming back to life outside the isolated Micmac Reserve, except for the indigenous inhabitants who are strangely immune to the zombie plague.
It's bad. Ninagasi.
This is another really underrated movie, and I know that most people, including myself, are pretty sick of zombie movies, and it feels like we've seen everything you can do in that space. But this has an interesting wrinkle because of the lore and the things that it deals with, because of the native people, the Native Americans in this being immune to the zombie outbreak. And so it deals with a lot of social issues. It leans into that concept and the isolation of it, and it leads to really interesting subtext and underlying meaning and story that this movie's conveying. It's also got some great action in it, some really cool fight scenes, just fun zombie killing. It's gory, it's definitely leans into that gore, and there's some really violent deaths, some interesting kills, things to do with swords, and just all these different bloody moments that fill up the runtime. I also just really like the characters in this, and the acting is really on point. It's nice to see actual Native American people acting in a movie. You just don't see enough Native people getting chances and opportunities to be in movies. And we are starting to see more and more of that. But it's just nice to see a cast that's made up of mostly natives, and they all just give great performances here. But I think if you're a fan of gory zombie goodness and have yet to check this one out, do yourself a favor and make this the next thing that you watch. The Hoarder is a 2015 UK horror movie. Directed by Matt Wynn, it stars Misha Barton, Robert Nepper, and Emily Attack. A young woman enters an underground storage facility, where she soon finds herself trapped and stalked by a killer. funny. This is one of those movies that, I don't know if you've had this experience, but when you see a movie and the concept of it and what it deals with, you're just like, man, how have there never been a movie made about this subject before? Because as someone who uses a storage unit the pretty much majority of my adult life, I've always rented bedrooms or small apartments or different things living in the city where I never have the space for the things I need to keep. And so of course I gotta have a storage facility. But if you have an indoor storage unit and you've ever walked down the halls and the lights turn out, or even if it's dimly lit and you gotta kind of turn lights on to get, you know, where you're going, it is so creepy. Your mind can easily run with you, especially if it's kind of late at night, because most of the time there's nobody else in that storage facility besides you. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I have been so creeped out throughout my life with some of these storage units. There's also been other times where you'll be walking by and you'll see some very strange person that is kind of hoarding things in this unit or living out of a unit or whatever else. And I'm sure that if you live in the city and rent a storage unit, you've probably seen some stuff. And so this movie takes that idea and runs with it. And it does a great job of kind of really leaning into that fear and the what ifs, and so it's easy for you to get sucked into this movie if you've experienced the things I'm talking about. But then it takes it even further and it gets really imaginative and creative, gross, all these different things, because the killer that's in this, the look, the style, all the different things that this movie throws at you are really a good time. But it's also not a perfect movie, so in no way am I saying this is a game changer or anything like that. I just think it's an entertaining, creepy little movie. So I was just very entertained by it and absolutely think it's worth your time.
You should never have come here!
The Hallow is a 2015 Irish creature feature horror movie. Directed by Colin Hardy, it stars Joseph Mao, Bowana Novakovic, and Michael Smiley. A family who moves into a remote mill house in Ireland finds themselves in a fight for survival, with demonic creatures living in the woods.
I believe that the forest that you're trampling on belongs to the Hallow.
Hallow.
Fairies, banshees, baby stealers.
This is one of those movies that it just blows me away that it doesn't get more attention. It's one of those where, probably because it's foreign, even though it's in English, it just doesn't get talked about a lot, and I don't get it. The creature design, the look, the mysterious qualities, the way it's shot, everything is so eerie and creepy, but also there's a cozy, fantastical element to this as well. But it gets really dark and moody and really leans into the wild nature, especially towards the end. But I am such a big fan of folk horror, movies that deal with old lore and legends and things like that. They're so moody and interesting. They deal with things that I'm not used to, and so that gives it a unique flair and feel about it. There's just something also that's just creepy about old world magic and stories about creatures and monsters. And this does such a good job of living in that space. So I think if you're a fan of creature feature folk horror movies and have yet to see this one, do yourself a favor and definitely watch this one next.
Come on.
Solomon Kane is a 2009 dark fantasy thriller, written and directed by MJ Bassett. It's based on the pulp magazine character of the same name created by Robert E. Howard, and stars James Purefoy, Rachel Hurd-Wood, and Pete Postlewaite. A ruthless mercenary renounces violence after learning his soul is bound for hell. But when a young girl is kidnapped and her family is killed, he is forced to fight and seek his redemption, slaying evil.
If I kill you, I am bound for hell. It is a price I shall gladly pay.
So this one and then the next movie I'm going to talk about are what I think would be a fun double feature. And they're both different than what I normally talk about. I'm not going to say that this is a horror movie or that the next one is, but there are a lot of horror elements in this, and they have a lot of really creepy tones and evil characters and they live in the fantasy world for sure, but I feel like most horror fans would still very much enjoy this. And so when I saw that this movie was on Tubi, I wanted to talk about it because yes, it is a fantasy movie, but it's a dark fantasy movie. And like I said, it's got a lot of horror in it. Some of the visuals, some of the things that it deals with, the bad guy, just all these things about it, it isn't like a lot of other fantasy movies. Like, this isn't like Lord of the Rings that has a few moments that are a little bit horror. Like, this one lives in a horror space. And so even though I'm someone that is not a big fan of fantasy movies, like, it's not that I don't like them, but they're just not my thing, even I have a good time with this one. And so I think if you're one of those people out there that have maybe skipped over this because you're like, yeah, that's not a horror movie and I'm not a huge fantasy fan, I think you might be surprised if you give this one a look.
Highlander, there can be only one.
And here we are, where the princes are these.
Highlander is a 1986 dark fantasy thriller. Directed by Russell Mulcahy, it stars Christopher Lambert, Sean Connery, and Clancy Brown. An immortal Scottish swordsman must confront the last of his immortal opponents, a murderously brutal barbarian who lusts for the fabled prize. So this was one of my favorite movies growing up. I can't tell you how many times I watched this when I was, a young teenager up into my 20s. I don't know what it is exactly about this, but I've always enjoyed this so much more than most other fantasy type of movies. And I think it's like what I was saying with Solomon Kane. There's a lot of horror elements in this. It's super dark and atmospheric and moody. It gets really creepy. And I mean, holy shit, if Clancy Brown's character is not a horror character, I don't know what is. I mean, the whole element of him kind of stalking the Highlander and there being a slasher kind of vibe to all of that as well just leads even more into that dark fantasy horror angle that I'm talking about. On top of that, I mean, how amazing is Sean Connery in this? His character is so entertaining, so much fun to see. This also is one of my favorite soundtracks ever. Queen just absolutely kills it in it. And that's also one of the things that really make this movie feel so iconic to me is that soundtrack. But don't come at me in the comments and argue with me saying these are not horror movies. I'm not saying that they are. I'm labeling them as dark fantasy movies. But there's plenty of horror elements in both of these movies that I think they would be a really fun double feature this weekend. So do yourself a favor this weekend, pick one of the movies off of this list, grab your popcorn and your candy, and enjoy! And like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. And I'll see you guys next time.